Hi, my name is Kaylee Quinn. I am from Buffalo, New York, located on the territory of the Seneca Nation, and I now live in Bisbee, Arizona, located on the homeland of the Chiricahua Apache people. If you aren't able to see me, again, my name is Kaylee, and I'm a white woman in my early 40s. I use she or they pronouns. I have shorter brown hair and brown eyes. I am smiling now, and today I am wearing an orange jacket. Wherever you are, I would like to invite you in, if you are willing, for a truth-telling dissertation in the form of a rebalancing of power to fulfill my point presentation. So stay with me for a bit, 10 minutes or so, maybe a little less. I promise I'll do my best not to digress. You see, in Canada, September 30th is federally recognized as Orange Shirt Day. Governments, schools, and courts are closed for remembrance, mourning, learning, and growth. Of what? The orange shirt represents the story of Phyllis Jack Webstad, who, on her first day at an Indian residential school, had her bright orange shirt that her grandmother had given her taken away. She was only 6 years young. 6 revolutions around the sun. So today in the United States, why not join with our northern neighbors, making today a day of remembrance for Indian boarding schools, that it is now clear we're also here. Because we need to work through this too, and it's actually possible that there were native boarding schools located quite close to you. These campuses and their missions left immeasurable scars, and the responsibility to hold them now is all of ours. So, good afternoon, good evening, or morning, however this finds you, herein lies your trigger warning. This upload of new information is hell-bent on snapping us all out of our quaint little house on the prairie hallucination. So I encourage you to take care of yourself on this little trip, and remember that at any point you can close this window, click, and jump ship. Maybe it's for another time or better heard in a different rhyme. If mine isn't your way, as always, that's completely okay. My personal preparation has been careful inquisition into an 1892 transmission when Captain Henry Richard Pratt spoke to the National Conference of Charities and Correction in Denver about his supposedly successful education experimentation based on his famous theorization that, quote, all the Indian there is in the race should be dead. Kill the Indian in him and save the man. What? Kill the Indian and save the man, he said. Yes, these hurtful, racist words became the foundation for a federal policy, a cold-blooded plan that started around 1860 and was then carried out for over a century all over this land. We're talking about childhood dislocation, when Native children were kidnapped into forced assimilation. There was a medical examination just before attaining their brainwashing training, full-blood quantum relation, sisters or cousins, then automatic separation. Devastation, desolation, desperation. You see, the imperial formation of Americanization is the deliberate creation of an all-white domesticated nation, no doubt. But this isn't what we're taught. We're bought. We buy into a campaign promoting patriarchal-based capitalization. Heart pain, sorry, in my chest that people were, have been, are so obviously oppressed. It does. It gets me right here because I now see how a lust for power can make love disintegrate, even disappear. And remember, here we're talking about a child ripped from their family, a family stripped of their child, the boys made to do manual labor, the girls taught that their only role was to cook, clean, and sew for the entire hall. A further perpetuation of the gendered attempt to unsavagerize and make stay in one place manifesto? Yes. insane. I mean, come on. And then keeping their records of menstruation while they all faced severe starvation. The main dish served there, language mutilation with sides of physical and spiritual objectification and deep, insidious internalization of colonization. It certainly makes me want to vomit, but we got to focus on it. At Indian boarding schools, parental visitation was replaced by militarization. Long hair chopped off, name dropped, shoved into a dorm, dressed in uniform, washed in gasoline, true. And yes, completely obscene. Line up, march 1, 2, 3. 408 so-called schools of industrialization in 37 states. There is a link below to the map where you can see how you overlap. So many children were afflicted, at least 20,000 by 1900. Imagine suddenly sitting for hours in a white classroom indoors, the shock, learning the days of the week only to be put on the clock. Church on Sunday, but not allowed to go home or speak any language but this one that I happen to be using now with you for my communication. Devastation, desolation, desperation. 86% of Native kids by 1926. When I first heard this figure, how could I not be transfixed? 86% of Native kids by 1926 gated into buildings of bricks? 86% of Native kids by 1926. Politics that suck and stick and stick. Not allowed to go home? And how could Natives continue to be nomadic if all property in this newly formed U.S. was to be privately owned? This scratches somewhere deep within my bones, like claws on a chalkboard, or like Native American boarding schools. A strict Methodization controlled by 14 Christian denominations. And then what happened? A tuberculosis infestation. Caused, of course, by overcrowded, intimidating Gothic architecture with no ventilation. Hold on, is this really what the U.S., us, what we call civilization? No, this is intentional annihilation. And many of the children who died there were buried right close by, without fanfare, never to return to their families again. And we won't even go into now about the how, come summertime, no go either. There was a placing out system operating as the status quo, fostering, adoption, servitude. And who was it prospering? Take one guess. This is once and for all finally coming out in the press. It was not until 1978, with the passing of the Indian Child Welfare Act, that Native American parents gained the legal right to deny their children's placement in off-reservation schools. 3 years before I came onto the planet. I can't even contemplate it. Today, Indigenous justice calls on transformation through sovereignty and continued self-determination. But after generations of broken treaty gyrations, 100-year-plus actions aimed at extermination, federal funding and organization put toward extirpation through continued character, customs, and cultural assassination, how could survivors not be in a state of continued confusion, inner and outer confrontation, or more? Devastation, desolation, desperation, hesitation. Wipe away any condensation, because we must move on to our next realization. Inside one of these Indian residential schools, usually any alleged altercation equated to a dark, dank basement rotation, such downright, long-lasting brutalization, corporal punishment of children, innocent children. I mean, how does one ever digest being sexually molested? Or how could you ever again gain trust or manage to adjust? Or I get caught up imagining violation after violation. It brings up this unexpected agitation all over, even me. Don't you see exasperation? Like, fuck, now heart palpitations again. Yuck. I thought that I could get through this, but once again, I'm going to get stuck in the muck, wholeheartedly panic struck, won't be able to go on. I knew it. Admittedly, this has happened before. It's this intense tug of war pulling on my own devastation, desolation, desperation. But nowhere near the size, the scale, the epic goodbyes. I must tell you, my definitive differential self-diagnosis, an obsessive preoccupation with the federalization of dehumanization. Federal lies. Federal lies. Lies emphasized in schools till this day in every way to propagandize. But we must prudently demystify the lies with zero compromise to see the blatant truth right before our eyes. And yes, traumatic association after traumatic association can take over, like a tonsil operation should include tubal ligation. Seriously, premeditated lawful calculation of sterilization, 1 out of 4 Native women without consultation by the so-called Indian Health Service Administration. Traumatic association after traumatic association can shut us down, but I don't want this to be our narration. So let's commit. Let's commit to looking into it as a society, a community, together. I don't know. I think it's only natural that children who grew up suffering this crime would keep trying to find some reason or rhyme, a justification as to the why me, what did I do? But this assault was never the Native American children's fault. After years of institutionalization, these young adults were thrown into a system of commercialization, one that was not constructed for them to survive. And where would they fit in after all that torture? How could they live if not just simply survive? Devastation, desperation, desolation. With such shame and shattered self-worth, these children grew to eventually give birth. Can you perceive of becoming a mom or a dad or a mom whilst remembering your own childhood heart still so yearning for love? And then raising your kids, of course, as best as you can, but lost too with your culture's ceremonies gone because they had been governmentally banned. And the new children coming into this fray, the children of children possibly going to these schools too, the great-grandchildren living today, either way, they also pay for this. Wait, don't go yet. I know I got a little, I could totally understand that you might be getting bored or going numb. It makes sense to shy away from all this, but stay with me a little bit longer. My hope is that our collective courage is growing stronger to look together, to see. You don't have to hold this all alone. Intergenerational trauma. Trauma is intergenerational, folks. A cycle that, unless broken, is passed on and on, beyond the beyonds and beyond the beyond. Seriously, the genes in our bones are not set in stone. A horrific childhood experience can literally shift the way our lineage's DNA is shown. It's a, quote, newer scientific field of study called epigenetics. So, to nurture or to nurture our true nature in this moment, we've got to turn on our parasympathetics. Inhalation, exhalation. You with me? Come on. Inhalation, exhalation, hydration, perhaps. Recalibration. I don't know about you, but my natural medication for me needs be self-preservation and sometimes a momentary quiet meditation in order to regain some kind of stabilization, in order to just be me in this world, and in order to return to the demonstration at hand. Concentration, commemoration, memorialization, illumination. There is an underlying empathetic vibration, a million ancestor to descendant consecration in collaboration with the earth over this hateful fragmentation, a songline, a subterraneous aquifer of tears, undamming fears from years upon years. Listen, a music of the spheres, thousands of tributary tones flowing, rolling into ocean stones. Can you hear it in both ears? Countless dear peers were sacrificed in the name of the great frontier, and yet as a people, American Indian, Alaskan Natives, and Native Hawaiians are still here. So, may this open-armed lamentation connect all the constellations, a star-studded syncopation, an intertribal-led indigenous allied thread, a celestial communication, beyond 7 future, past, and present generations, harmonization from urban to rural, rural to urban, forest to deserts, from rancherias to reservations, initiated by the National Native American Boarding School Coalition. Let this incantation be an invocation that uplifts current legislation, turning devastation, desolation, desperation into reconciliation. Yes, it's time for the manifestation of a clear and direct federal declaration. No more rationalization, misrepresentation, betrayal, or appropriation. Manifest Destiny Proclamation was native westward deportation, a genocide-built nation. And when obliteration proved a complication, the United States of America stole native children into deadly incarceration. The time for healing around this has always been now. So, to our dearest representation, senators, Congress, human to human, we implore you, by Native American Heritage Month, please open the door and finally bring to the floor S 2907 and the companion bill HR 5444, the Truth and Healing Commission on the Indian Boarding Schools Policy Act. Let me be unequivocally exact. It's already been drafted, gone through committee, heard testimonies last May. So much has been conveyed. So by this November 2022, this new commission needs be intact and backed so in the coming years we can carry out reparation through investigation, documentation, record location, access and analyzation, yes, unmarked grave identification, protection and repatriation, a land return of boarding school campuses and buildings before everyone adjourns, then further recommendations, public forums with culturally appropriate decorum, hearings engineering a safe space for the attestation of such perpetration, transparent visibility, and the verbalization of truth, the truth, and reconciliation now. P.S. Prior to every graduation, especially all medical and teaching certification, these words, this history, must be taught and heard. Thank you.